What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the Sixers Digest YouTube channel. We're coming off a disappointing weekend in which Joel Embiid did not answer the call and step up for the MVP showcase in the way that I think we all hoped. Just dropped a video on that on the channel, so make sure to check that out. My full thoughts on the injury report fiasco and other takeaways from that game. But we got to talk a little bit looking ahead to the future and figuring out how this Sixers team is shaping up ahead of the trade deadline. Couple new names and guys that we've talked about before with a little more clarity on that I want to jump into with my guy Eddie here. But before we dive into all of that, I do want to start off with just reminding you guys to make sure you're smashing that subscribe button. That at this point in time, 79.2% of you guys watching these videos have not subscribed to the channel just yet. We want to hit that 3,000 mark before the end of January and do not have much time to do it. So make sure that you're smashing that, helping us out. Appreciate all the support so far. And to get into the topic of today, we do have some trade targets to talk about. So in a new article on Bleacher Report by Zach Buckley, mentions the top 3 trade targets for each team. And for the Sixers, he lists out Dorian Finney-Smith of the Brooklyn Nets, Bogdan Bogdanovix of the Atlanta Hawks, and Alex Caruso of the Chicago Bulls. And Buckley writes, quote, "The Sixers have enough trade chips to go star hunting, but this doesn't feel like the right time to splurge. DeJounte Murray is an imperfect fit alongside Tyrese Maxey. Zach LaVine is overpaid. DeMar DeRozan might shrink some of their attack lanes for Maxey and Joel Embiid. Philly should look for opportunities to improve, of course, but a high-end role player feels like the best option. Finney-Smith's combination of length, shooting, and defensive versatility bump him atop this wish list, but any of these players would be a good get. Bogdanovich could add another off-the-dribble scorer to the mix, and he'd be just as helpful for his off-ball movement and spot-up shooting. Caruso could help connect plenty of the dots and his two-way playmaking." So out of those options, those being Dorian Finney-Smith, Bogdan Bogdanovich, and Alex Caruso, which one of these do you want to get into first today, Eddie?
Well, the one that excites me the most would be Alex Caruso. I mean, the guy has been a killer two-way role player for years now, since that last Lakers, good Lakers run with him on it, where he was finally getting some media attention. And then the Lakers, dumb enough, didn't want to throw some money at him. So off he walks, and now he's in purgatory with Chicago. And I think the reason why Alex Caruso might be my favorite of these is because of its simple cost benefit analysis. You're going to have to maybe give up more for the other guys. Also, you're going to have to take on more contract wise for the other guys. So the combination of Alex Caruso's contract being lower than the other two guys, not having to give up as much, and just his value as a two-way player is killer. I mean, we were talking a little bit about Kyle Lowry as a buyout option, right? And Caruso, that's 100 times the version of what like 2024 Kyle Lowry is going to give you in terms of the defensive tenacity you need as your secondary guard. I mean, we have questions right now with who's going to be in that too. We have some Melton injury updates to come, hopefully, and we have some Oubre questions just in terms of performance. And so I would love to get Caruso. I think he is such a great lockdown, versatile defender. It's not just the guards that are going to be hunting Maxey on the opposite side of the matchups. Caruso can slide up decently well. I saw it quite a bit when I was living in Los Angeles and writing quite a bit about the Lakers. Caruso can slide all over the place on defense, and I think that is something the Sixers really need in their rotation, because we have that stockpile of big wings to throw at people, but you might need someone to defend some more in between guys, and Caruso would be killer for that.
Yeah, I'm with you, Eddie, that I think this is about the exact image of that like playoff caliber, championship tendered kind of rotational player, that he is a guy that every contender needs. He's a piece that I think is not cleanly on the Sixers, and the more that I have watched Caruso this year, one of my concerns in the conversation with Alex Caruso is what is the gap between him and De'Anthony Melton as far as the talent, because there is somewhat similar skill sets in what they do on the floor, and the more that I've watched him this year, the more impressed with how much I think that gap is, that there's little doubt to me. I think Caruso is among the top 5 perimeter defenders in the NBA. The way that he moves laterally and is able to stay in front of guys really just pops off the floor and is super impressive. And to kind of get into his stats as a whole on the season, 10.1 points per game, which is a career high for him, also adding 3.6 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 1.3 steals, 1.0 block, shooting 41.5% from three on 4.4 attempts per game. That's also, I believe, yes, a career high in attempts for three-pointers, which that's very...
All of his offensive numbers are career highs right now. I mean, and it has to do with what he's asked to do, which is not that much. So he's able to be so efficient, and this is the best mark of this in terms of advanced stats, is it's the first time he's had like a positive offensive box plus minus rating for a season. Wow. He's always had the highest or a top two defensive rating on a team. You know, when he played with LeBron and AD, he's going to have the third best defensive rating on a team. But this is the first time he's even had a positive offensive rating. So that is really something to look at in terms of what's going to set him apart, because as you said, he is a top 5 perimeter defender.
Yeah, absolutely. And that 3-point attempts per game is especially appealing to me because that's probably been one of the rare negatives that has attached to him, is not quite as willing as a shooter as you would like, specifically on a team built around Joel Embiid that needs these perimeter floor spacers. He's looked more willing this year. The efficiency has only increased. And another point that I would like to give to Caruso is he has a knack for hitting big shots, that he's not afraid of the moment, will step up in big opportunities, which I like quite a bit about him. So I'm absolutely interested in Caruso and would rank that as the top out of these three options here. But I did want to shift gears and talk about the next guy that I think I would bring up is Dorian Finney-Smith. That he is a guy that I think is buying a little bit out of the bargain bin, but I do like the length, I do like the athleticism, and when I think of the best version of Dorian Finney-Smith, it was on that Mavericks run in which he was the ideal 3-and-D role player next to Luka Doncic. I thought he was especially optimized playing next to a player with the gravity of Luka Doncic. Not quite in apples-to-apples comparison with Embiid, but still that ability, that gravity, the command of double teams, I think all kind of translate with Joel Embiid. So how do you see his fit on the Sixers?
Well, I'm relieved to know that he's at least shooting better this year than he was, because I have to say, I haven't been watching all that much Brooklyn basketball outside of when the Sixers play them. When you say bargain bin, I mean, that's like a league pass bargain bin team. No one really has too much fun watching the Nets unless they're playing their team, right? So I was happy to see, because when he first went to the Nets after that trade, he was only shooting 30% from three, and 35 before the trade. But now he's back up to 38, which is more of what you wanted from him, that really good Mavs postseason run with that vintage, now it seems vintage Luka Booker showdown, which is so crazy to say. Those guys are, younger than both of us, but it's really like, it's not that far removed. He can get that back because it's not that big of a gap from where he was as just a role player, as a knockdown shooter, a versatile enough defender. He's not obviously going to be the perimeter defender that Caruso is, but he's going to add more size because he's so much bigger. But it's also like, I don't know, the gap in terms of defense between him and the bigger wings that we have already. So that gives me a little pause. What I'm really looking at is the volume of 3-point shooting, and that's what I would want from him. Him and the final target, who we've already made a video about, and the very high asking price about Bogey. I think DFS, if you can get a much better asking price from the non-competitive Nets who are kind of in purgatory right now, maybe that is a better offer, because you can pump up his volume quite a bit and hope he stays at 38%-ish.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, the mindset for this deal would be, and this is one of my greatest concerns with this Sixers team, is who's going to be that guy guarding Jason Tatum when push comes to shove, when we get into this playoff run? Who is that top-tier perimeter defender? I wouldn't say DFS is like the guy, but I still think he's a better option than a lot of what they have right now. But I still feel more confident in that as an opportunity rather than Tobias Harris or Nico Batum or Marcus Morris or DeAnthony Melton playing above his size. All those is kind of the Sixers' best looks right now. So I do take that from a Dorian Finney-Smith standpoint. And also to jump into some of the efficiency, throughout his career, a 35.9% 3-point shooter. So he's been pretty up and down. He's had a couple seasons near the 40% mark. He tends to be a hot and cold shooter, so not quite the guy that you would hope for as a dead eye. If that is the direction they're looking, it's absolutely this last name that we got to. That we've talked a lot about Bojan Bogdanovix. Wanted to bring up Bogdan Bogdanovix now. So of the Atlanta Hawks, and to lay out his stats here specifically, 31 years old, averaging a career high 17.1 points per game this year. The Hawks sound like they're straight up open for business, and he's a guy that, even with the efficiency dropping a little bit to 36.9% 3-point attempts on 8.4 attempts per game, throughout his career, he's a 38.5% 3-point shooter, shot 40.6% last year. I like Bogdan, and I think that's the cleanest offensive fit. What are your thoughts on him and potentially joining the Sixers?
I'm really impressed with his numbers this year because he's putting up 8 threes a game,
Yeah.
which is a lot, 8.4, but he's in a completely broken offense. Like, I know that Trae Young is a fantastic passer, right? But he takes so many bailout threes.
Yeah.
If you watch the Hawks, like, obviously Trae is going to take a lot of bailout threes too, and Murray's going to take some bailout, whatever those are, mid rangers, I guess, or runners. But he has a lot of weight on his shoulders that he would not have in Philly, and I think his efficiency would be so much higher. And even if he's just like coming off the bench, maybe you scale that down to 6 3-point attempts a game or so. I can easily see him clearing 41, 42 because when he's hot, when he's in a good system, he is a dead eye shooter. And I think the very broken, as I said, Hawks offense that really only works when Trae Young's running at the rim and can either throw a floater or a lob. That's really the only thing they've had for the last 3-4 years now. I think he would be so much more comfortable in a good offense
Yeah.
and would be so much more efficient.
Yeah, and I've talked plenty about how much all shooters benefit from playing alongside a Joel Embiid. You look at the Georges Niangs, the JJ Redicks, the Seth Currys, the name goes on and on. That's kind of the fit I see with them, and I do love the movement shooting ability. I don't think there's a true guy on the Sixers that can kind of match that this year. Seth Curry's a guy who really excelled in this Sixers system playing next to Joel Embiid with that two-man game. That's very much kind of the niche that I would see Bogdan carving out here. But my also concern with that is the downside of Seth Curry was obviously the defensive side of the ball. And I think we're running into the exact same thing with Bogdanovix here, that Daryl Morey has been pretty opening on wanting two-way players. Absolutely agree with that mindset. There is a give and take with that. When you can get a 17-point per game scorer who can shoot at this volume, you can kind of put up with a little bit of the defensive shortcomings. But for how much blame that was thrown on Ben Simmons, thrown on Doc Rivers for that Hawks series, when push came to shove, it was Kevin Huerter giving Seth Curry 25 points per game that really hurt this team in a major way. And obviously not the reason they lost there, but still something that falls under that category. So I do have a bit of that concern with Bogdanovich, and I think for me, that's why I probably drop him to third on my list. So if I'm ranking these three trade targets, I would probably lay mine out as Caruso 1, Dorian Finney-Smith 2, and Bogdanovich 3, but don't have a hard issue with them going at any one of these guys or even multiple of them. But what would you rate these guys as a whole?
I would definitely keep the same ratings or rankings rather,
sure.
but I would say that Caruso kind of is a cut above. There's like a power gap there where I would much, much prefer them to go after a Caruso type, only because I know what I'm getting. As we said with DFS, the shooting can be a little streaky with Bogey. The defense, who knows? I just really think Caruso, and that's not the end all be all solution to the Sixers chances at beating Boston in the playoffs, but I think that's easily what moves the needle the most, and I think that's what they should lock in on of those three. I mean, with Bogdanovich, well, maybe I would put Bogdanovich ahead of DFS, but it's close. Those are kind of up in the air for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the bottom two, definitely the names most likely to be moved, that the Hawks seem pretty much open for business, especially if the DeJounte Murray trade happens. And that's a name that I have above any of these guys. And I'm still in that conversation of the Sixers needing that much of a needle mover in my mind. But I ultimately do understand the mindset of settling for role players depending on price and all those things. So we will see what happens from that. I do want to hear from you guys in the comments. What are your thoughts on these three names? Drop your rankings for where you would put these three, 1 through 3, or your hard pitch for one of them individually. But thank you guys for tuning into this video. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video, and we'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest.